Books. Let's talk about them. I love books, and in the last year I read 22 books. I didn't reach my goal of 24 books, but I did read 22 books in 12 months. I know it's not super impressive, but I really enjoyed every single one of them. Let me put this back. And there have been some life-changing books. I'm not using this word lightly. Yes, there were life-changing books that really have shifted my perspective about life. So I wanted to make a video about the books that I recommend to anyone to read for the longest time. But there was this voice inside of me that was saying, well, you know what? You haven't read all the books in the world, so how can you recommend a specific number of them? Because there are definitely other books that I would want to recommend to anyone to read, but I haven't read them yet, so I can't recommend them yet. But you know what? 2021 is the year when I am not afraid to admit that I haven't read every single book in the world, that I don't know everything in the world, that I'm not an expert in every field, and that I'm just learning, that this is a process. I'm focused on progress, not perfection. So I've decided to just go for it and create a video with the books that this version of me would recommend for anyone to read. And there will be more videos on the topic where I update this list. So if you're watching this in 2022 or maybe even later on in 2021, there might be an updated video of this because the updated version of me thinks you should also watch those ones, read those ones. And before we get to the books, I just want to mention that I consume books, I read books in different formats. So I don't have physical versions of a lot of the books that, most of the books, I think all of the books that I'm about to tell you about, I don't have a physical copy of it. However, I do have them on my Kindle or on my Audible. So I have either read them in the digital version or I've listened to them. You see, I'm dyslexic, and also I've been a digital nomad, so I couldn't exactly carry around a book. It wasn't really a sustainable lifestyle if I wanted to read a lot of books. However, I did have my iPad and I have my Kindle in there, so that was an option. And also I'm dyslexic, and I found that combining the different formats really helps me understand and digest the information more. Yeah, it enables me to consume much more information, grow, etc. So I have been actually using a combination of Audible and Kindle, and also Kindle, some of the books. For example, I'm reading a new book right now on strategy. It's called Playing to Win. Let's see if it's going to make the list in the next video. But for that one, it's a Kindle book, but it's also an Audible narration, which is synced. So it actually highlights the words. You can have it open where it highlights the words that you are currently reading. So it's pretty, or that the voice is currently reading. So it's pretty nice. I really enjoy that for some reason. Like, I can read it, but I really like it when somebody else reads it for me. Maybe it's just because I'm consuming this content in so many different ways that it sticks better. That's just how my brain works. Maybe your brain works differently, and so you can, I envy you if you're just like reading books in paper form all the time and it's normal. All right, let's get to the books. And the first one is Essentialism. I absolutely loved this book, and I did the whisper sync thing where it's Kindle and also it reads it for you. It's such an amazing book. It talks about how you can gain clarity in your life by focusing on the essentials. How do you filter out the essentials from the noise of the world? Because let's be honest, there's just so many opportunities, so much information, there's so much. And how do you focus on the tasks and the things and the projects in life, in personal life and work that truly serve you, serve your purpose, serve your community, whatever those essentials are for you, and how to figure out what is essential for you. So this book was absolutely life-changing. Oh, one more thing that it talks about. It talks about a lot of things, but one more thing that I think is super worth mentioning is the success paradox. So it's basically when you focus on your goals and you are achieving them and you become more successful, you basically open up more opportunities in front of you, and a lot of the times, if you don't control what you say yes to, if you go for everything, it just creates that mess, that overwhelm, where you're not focused anymore. And so it's called success paradox because it happens when you're successful. When you're successful, you have more opportunities, and by saying yes to everything, you end up not being successful. So read the book. It's super interesting. I loved it. And to be honest, as I was reading it, as I was listening to it, I was actually listening to it on my runs. As I was listening to it, I was so motivated to start implementing that in my life, because clarity, it's priceless, and also your time is probably the most limited resource you will ever find. Like, time is finite, right? And the fact that we're wasting it on things that don't serve us is wasteful. And so this book gives you a way to declutter your time, your to-do list, etc. And so as I was reading it, I was super motivated to start decluttering my to-do list, because I did feel overwhelmed. I felt super stressed and almost burnt out at the time. So I decided that it was time. It was time to declutter, and I publicly renounced some of the projects that I've started. For example, I had my merchandise line, and at the time it wasn't serving my purpose. I didn't have time for it. I didn't have the resources, like mental capacity resources for it, because, like, yes, it is merch. It doesn't seem like it's anything, but then you don't see the admin works that goes into that merch. Like, there's all of the VAT and like dealing with different accounting in different countries. It was too much on my plate, and it was not serving my purpose. So I was like, you know what, cut it off. And I quit that. I publicly quit that. I told everyone I am renouncing this project. It was a very interesting moment in my life, because everybody was kind of shocked and felt bad for me. But I was like, no, you don't understand. I'm freeing up my resource. I'm freeing up my energy. And this book has motivated me to do that. So I highly recommend reading that book for anyone, because no matter what profession you're in, what stage of life you're going through right now, you probably are saying yes to more things than you should. And this book will really help you get to the core and like filter out everything that doesn't matter. Because let's be honest, a lot of things don't matter. And I think 2020 has really showed it to us. So yeah, read that book, Essentialism. Amazing. The next book is Mindset. And I've talked about it in multiple videos actually, because it just made such a huge impression on me, and it just made such a huge impact in my life, and I recommend it to everyone. Again, there it is. I recommended it to my mom. She loved it. She's now recommending it to everyone, and it just makes me so happy. The book is all about the growth mindset, and you might say, well, I know what growth mindset is, and therefore I don't need to read the book. Still, even if you think you have growth mindset, I did going into reading this book. I highly recommend reading this book because it, first of all, points out what growth mindset really is and shows studies, etc., and points out fixed mindset, because we all have fixed mindset. It's not binary, like it's not like you either have growth mindset or fixed mindset. It's a spectrum. For example, I have a growth mindset when it comes to certain skills, but then when it comes to, I don't know, let's say artistic skills, right? That's one of the things that society says you either have a talent, let's say in painting or music, or you don't. However, that's a fixed mindset, because if you do practice, you can become better. If you do put in the effort, put in the time, oh my God, the opportunities are endless. And I know that from personal experience, because you don't want to see my childhood drawings. They're atrocious. And now I think that I'm not trying to be a painter, but I really enjoy painting, and I really enjoy, the state of mind that it puts you in. It's kind of a hobby, but I'm pretty happy with my work. I can't say that I'm a professional painter. I'm not trying to be, but it's nowhere near the squirrel that I drew when I was 5 years old that looks like a dinosaur. Trust me, it's much better, and it takes time. It takes learning techniques and understanding what professionals are doing. Of course, you're not going to be a natural at everything. It's just a normal thing. And yeah, that book really points it out and helps you shift from the fixed mindset and into growth mindset in all of these different areas of your life, and recognize that fixed mindset. I think that's what's super important. So I highly recommend it to anyone, because not only it explains what fixed mindset versus growth mindset is and how to cultivate it. But it also talks about the side effects that fixed mindset may have, like self-doubt and I think imposter syndrome. It doesn't say it directly. I think imposter syndrome is linked to it. I need to do more research into this, and I will. There will be a follow-up video about that, but I think imposter syndrome comes from fixed mindset too. There's so many different other things that are side effects of fixed mindset, and growth mindset just elevates you and elevates your feeling of self-worth, like understanding of self-worth. It's awesome. So that's another thing. And the final thing that I think everybody should read it for is the book talks about how to give praise, give compliments, etc. in order to cultivate a growth mindset, especially when it comes to children, because children, that's all they know. They know what praise people are giving them, and so that kind of programs them on how they see the world. And so even if you don't have children or don't want to have children at any point in your life, you will be interacting with children at some point of your life, and understanding how to give them praise in a way that cultivates that growth mindset, I think is super important. And also giving praise to your colleagues or, I don't know, employees or whatever. It's so important. Book number 3, The Happiness Advantage. I love this book. I started the year with this book, or at least it was one of the first books that I read this year, and it was phenomenal. I also listened to it. I listened to all of these books. This book is all about how to create patterns, how to create an environment that maximizes your happiness, because we're in control of our environment. We're in control of those factors, like our habits, our daily routines, even the space that we're in, how we communicate with others, etc. Scientists say that there is a baseline of happiness that everybody kind of comes back to whenever something happens. So for example, let's say you bought a new bag, great bag that you always wanted. So your happiness curve goes up, but over time it will go down, subside, and you will get used to that bag. You're not going to be grateful for the fact that you are able to afford it every single day. And so your happiness will go down back to the base level. Let's say you failed an exam, or I don't know, you got a fee because you didn't park right, or whatever, something bad happened. Your happiness level goes down below that line. Imagine that there's a line here, and it eventually starts coming back and gets back to normal. So there's that baseline that everybody comes back to. So, material things are not a sustainable way to improve your happiness. However, you can improve it by implementing those patterns, habits, etc. that Sean Aker talks about in this book. And it's super interesting because psychologists say that we have a certain capacity for happiness, and 50%, roughly 50%, is genetically predisposed. We're predisposed for a certain level of happiness, but then the other 50% is something that we can work with, and that's where those patterns and those habits come into play. That's where you can actually change something and increase your base level. I know there's a lot of different graphs going on here, but read the book, you will understand it. It's super interesting and super empowering because we are all in control of our happiness. We just have to make sure that we're putting the right mechanisms in play in order to achieve it. Book number 4 is You're a Badass. It's an awesome book. I have talked about it on multiple occasions and have recommended it to so many people. I'm sure some of you are watching it right now. I'm sure we've spoken about this book. It's amazing. It just gives you such an amazing boost of motivation when it comes to believing in yourself and fulfilling your potential. It gives you a kick in the butt to get off your butt and start going for your dreams, because you know what? You only have one life and you might as well make it count, and you might as well start right now, today, not wait for tomorrow or for Monday to happen. If you have a goal, just start working on it. And this book motivates you to do so. I highly recommend for anyone to read it, even if, motivation isn't necessarily a department that you're struggling with, because it just gives you these techniques, and the stories that it has are just so inspiring. I think everyone should read it. It's a wonderful book. Read it. I honestly have reread this book on multiple occasions. Well, I listened to it because dyslexia. And also Jen Sincero reads it, and she is so funny and just awesome, and I love her voice. And it's just, I don't know, when the author reads the book themselves on Audible or any other audiobook, it's so nice. Like, they wrote it. They know how it's supposed to be read. So, and I think this year in 2021, I will do it again, because I have some projects that I would love that motivation boost, that kick in the butt again. So, coming for you, you're a badass. Book number 5 is The Power of a Positive No by William Ury. And it is awesome. Saying no is something that a lot of us are afraid of doing, and it is a muscle that you need to develop, especially because ever since we are children, saying no is seen as a bad thing. It's seen as something that will create conflict, etc. So reframing, saying no, and learning how to say no in a positive way is such a skill. And this book does an awesome job of breaking things down and giving you a framework of how you can say no in a positive way that saves relationships. I actually have a video on how to say no that is basically based on that book. I will leave a link to it in one of those corners and also in the description. So if you're watching this on YouTube, go in the corners or description, you will find it there. The theory, the framework is really good. I think it's really solid, and I've been using it for a very long time, and I'm becoming better as I am practicing it, because as I said, it is a muscle. You need to get comfortable with saying no, and the more you say it, the more eloquently you can say it, and therefore you get even more comfortable with saying no. It's awesome. Saying no is great. Protecting your boundaries is healthy, and everybody should read this book. And the next book is The 4-Hour Workweek. I love this book. I think it's amazing. I only have it on Audible. That's why I have to pull up my phone that is connected to my microphone. So I hope that doesn't affect the sound. But it is an awesome book. I think that you have to read it take it with a grain of salt, just like any book, like don't take every book as an instruction on how to live your life. Take it as opinions and different ways people live their lives, but don't apply everything, like from 1 to 100 to yourself, like everything from the book. Don't apply it to yourself. And I think this book is a perfect example of it. A lot of the things that Tim Ferriss says are in the ways that I would live my life. However, this book is very interesting from the perspective of 9 to 5 is an option. Like working 9 to 5 is an option. However, there are also other options. And like the more the world is becoming digital, the more options we have to, work differently and not hustle. Like the hustle culture is overrated, and he is all about minimizing the amount of time he can work so that he can actually enjoy his life and experience different things in life. So I think from that perspective, from that standpoint, it's a super interesting book that gives you a taste of a different lifestyle that's maybe polar opposite to what you're doing right now, and seeing how you can implement certain aspects of that lifestyle into your life. So I think when I listened to this book, it was very perspective shifting for me on how life can be. And this was just before we became digital nomads. So it was, I came back to that book a lot when trying to implement certain things in my life, because I decided that it was time to reshift certain things. So those 6 are my main recommendations. However, I have 2 other bonus ones that I didn't mention in the title. However, I love them, and I think they're really interesting for anyone who wants to implement, who has gotten inspired by all of these books and wants to implement this stuff to their lives. All right, so the first of the 2 implementation books is Your Best Year Ever by Michael Hyatt. He also actually has a book called Free to Focus. I think they're pretty similar, but they have a very similar approach. Well, it's the same author, but very, very interesting, very actionable in terms of how you can start organizing your life. And there's like goal setting technique, etc., etc., etc. And I think it's very solid. And this book in particular, I would recommend reading this one first before you go to Free to Focus, because this one was the predecessor to Free to Focus, and it's about your life in general. Free to Focus is, yes, about your life in general too, and like how to declutter things, but I think this one is more encompassing, and it has some really interesting templates for goals and a theory on how to set goals. I actually talked about it, this book and that template, in another video as well. It's super interesting. Highly recommend it. And finally, we have the 5-second rule by Mel Robbins. I love Mel Robbins. I'm obsessed with her and everything she produces. And this book is awesome for anyone who is struggling with starting things, with implementation, with like getting stuff done, with motivating themselves to just start, just start something, whether it's waking up in the morning, or I don't know, going for your goals when it comes to your fitness or health goals or work, just stop procrastinating. She has created a wonderful book with there's so much research that has gone into this book about the psychology of procrastination, actually, the psychology behind this 5-second rule, etc., etc. It's super interesting, super actionable. If you want 2021, or whenever you're watching this video, if you want this year to be the year when you start implementing, if you're ready to start acting, you've listened to or read You're a Badass and Essentialism and all these books, and you want to start implementing, but you just need that like ignition, this is the book. It's awesome, and I highly recommend it. So those are the books that this version of me, today's version of Masha, would recommend for anyone to read. I think those books are super motivating and help you really discover what you're passionate about, find that clarity, and go for the life that you deserve, that you want to build for yourself. I am super passionate on the topic. I even have a course on how to define what success means to you. I will link it in the description if you want to learn more about it. There's also a free version of it in case if you would like to get acquainted with my methodology. So yeah, all of that information will be in the description. But I'm also super excited to read more books. I have so many. I don't have a lot of books here. My husband has a whole shelf of books upstairs. I also have started listening and reading, just consuming books in so many different formats already. So I'm super excited for the next iteration of this video to recommend more books that I think everyone should read. And yeah, we'll see. We'll see what that list would look like, and we'll see what that version of Masha would look like. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Let me know what you thought about these books in particular. Have you read any of them, and what are your thoughts on them? And of course, what other books would you recommend for anyone to read? I'm always looking for new books to add to my list. I'm honestly just consuming content, consuming books as much as I can. So please leave all of that goodness in the comments, because I will be adding those books to my list. And yeah, like this video if you've enjoyed it, share with a friend who also who loves books and is looking for new books to read, and subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already. You can also find me on other social media as Coding Blonde, and we can be friends there. And I just hope that you're having a wonderful time today you're currently experiencing. Bye.